Yeah.
Just some Twitter boys.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Chicago Football Connection and Bears Blog Boys podcast. We're doing a joint podcast this week. So we had the guys from Bears Blog Boys, Tommy and Snyder, on to talk just NFL draft with us. So we're just we're keeping it broad, and we're just going to kind of wing it, honestly.
Yep.
And we're just going to go where the conversation takes us. It could be offensive tackles, wide receivers, position players, rankings, stuff like that. We don't know yet. So we'll going to wing it. Luke, I know you wanted to start us off with something, so I'm going to kick it to you.
Yeah, well,
let's get this conversation going.
Yeah, we were talking about it before the show, and it was like one of those pause, let's not waste this until we're live. But we had PFF yesterday did their mock, and they had the Bears taking Darnell Wright at 9, and I think the last month that 9 pick has pretty much exclusively in mock drafts for the Bears been either Paris Johnson. We've seen Lucas Van Ness a little, which I hate. I guess we could talk about that in a bit. I see people. I'm not going to get too much into that. We can talk about that later. We see a lot of Skoronski and then a little bit of JSN, but I think that was the first time we've seen Darnell Wright anywhere that close to the top 10. But it's kind of like some of the stuff that we've been saying, and you were saying it before the show too, Tommy, that day one he might be the most pro ready. I think there's something to be said about a tackle that plays his best when he's has the best competition, and that's definitely true of Darnell Wright. But the last month, I bet Grinding the Mocks would say the same thing. He was kind of that fringe first round. Me and Steve for months had said if we can get him in the second, it'd be a home run. But I don't think at this point, I don't think there's a chance he makes it out of the first. But it's kind of at the point now where, is there a reason you wouldn't just, especially Steve, I know because you're in love with him, you wouldn't just be prepared to say, hey, he's my OT1 in the class? And I guess I'll just, let the boys field that question, because I think I'm prepared to do so. And I think you'd agree, Tommy, and I wrote a piece about this, is that passing offense is the most important thing in the NFL. It's not close. And I don't think anyone would argue that day one, he's probably the best pass protector in the class. So if the Bears, everybody basically that we love is available at 9, took Darnell Wright, would the boys be poisoned? What would the boys think?
I guess I want to broaden the question out, because me and Snyder were literally just talking about this the other day. And do you all think that they have to take a tackle at 9? Do you think that's kind of where they position you? So I know you wrote that piece about not reaching for the value in free agency, not overpaying for, having the value meet up with the price. And I totally hear that. And I actually agreed with a lot of what Poles did in that regard. Yep. Me and Snyder kind of talked that out in a therapy session podcast about why they passed on the tackles they did. But at the same time, you kind of are playing a risky game if you try to run it back with the strategy last year, which was start 2 guys you took on day 3.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in that situation again. So before I do want to talk about who are the best tackles are in this class, but do you guys think that they have to take a tackle?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree.
I would prefer that they do because I want Justin Fields to not get killed. But I don't think they need to, and I don't think they will just take a tackle just to take a tackle, which is probably more important than what we want them to do or think they will do. I don't think Poles is thinking that way at all. That being said, I do hope they take a tackle. I hope it's Darnell Wright or Paris Johnson. Those are my 1-2.
If it's not one of them at 9, there'll be hell to pay.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that.
Well, that's the thing, though. I'm not saying I agree with this process, but the only way you feel very optimistic about the right tackle position, and we'll talk about maybe the left tackle position a little bit later on, is if they do take a tackle at 9. Because like Tom said, if they don't, now you're risking kind of running it back the same way you did last year with the league low true pass sets. Yep. I guess maybe your hope is that DJ Moore maybe opens it up more, where it's maybe not as sufferable with the low pass attempts. But again, don't agree with the process. But the only way I feel optimistic about a very important position is if they do so at pick 9.
Yeah.
I'll also say real quick is if the Bears do take Paris Johnson at 9, let's say, I will be very ecstatic for the future of the Bears offensive line. But that doesn't really do a lot for me for week 1, because I do think Paris Johnson has some things he needs to work on. So I'm very excited about next year, the year after, for Paris Johnson being a franchise left tackle. But that year 1, he's going to have some growing pains. But any right tackle at 9, down on right's probably more pro ready, but he's still a rookie. He's going to have some growing pains too. So it's not like that solves all of your problems by picking an offensive tackle at 9.
I don't know if you guys saw this. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I feel like I know what you're going to say, but go for it.
I tweeted out there are true pass sets in their career, and Paris Johnson obviously only has one season at tackle in college. How do you just tackle in general? Broderick Jones still very new to the position as well. Like, I think Paris Johnson only had 174 true pass sets in his entire career at tackle. Broderick Jones only had like 204. Yeah. Like Darnell Wright and Peter Skoronski are so much farther ahead. Even Anton Harrison too. They're so much farther ahead than those guys. It's you can't draft them. They were playing a different game. You cannot draft them and just expect them to hit the NFL game running. From a physical perspective, like their body, like getting grown man bodies, they're still super young. Like I feel like if you were to make an argument for Peter Skoronski, if you were to make an argument for Darnell Wright, that's where the argument comes in. They are a leg up just developmentally.
Yeah, I think their technique shows that too. I think it's a lot more nuanced. I think there was a good piece maybe 2 days ago where I think we're probably all familiar. Brandon Thorne, like one of the best offensive line guys on Twitter. If you're not following him, you should. He did like a little Q&A with Brandon Moreno, just talking about some of the tackle class. And the way he viewed it was that, there might not be a blue chip guy in this class at all. And if you believe that, and if you believe that Poles, like we've seen in free agency, is this guy where he's going to try and fit valuation with evaluation. If they don't take someone at 9, like you said, Snides, I actually don't know if I agree that we're in the hole there, because there's a chance that in that like 3 or 4 pick stretch at the end of the second and to start the third, they could double down. They could do something like take a Matt Bergeron and take like a Blake Freeland. Maybe that's a little bit later, but if you take a couple of hits at it, and I tweeted this today, the hit rate in the draft for any position isn't going to be great. The more you take swings at it, the better chances you get. I don't think you can always bank on doing something like finding a Braxton Jones in a late round, like a serviceable starter. But if we miss on those tackles in the first 2 rounds, depending on how the board falls, I think that there's an opportunity for us to find some value in those later picks and maybe even hit it twice. And if that's the case, like I think that maybe they could get, lucky and find someone in that spot. But it's also about like, is there a chance that there's another tackle available by the time the season starts, like maybe a late cut or something like that? And you really have put yourself in a position where you can't leave the draft without someone that you're at least willing to say might be the starter in that position. And if that's your belief, you might kind of get pigeonholed into that tackle spot at 9.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. If you're just looking at the Braxton Jones selection in a vacuum, good teams should do that every single year. Yep. Take a swing at a toolsy, long, athletic offensive tackle prospect. That should be every year. It doesn't even need to, it could be more than one time. It should be every year. The process of taking Braxton Jones was fantastic.
Yep.
Now, the process of making him the default starter week 1, that's where I question it. And I'm leaning towards it's like, that's my same logic in round 2, because I do like Matthew Bergeron there. I think the value is there at round 2, but he comes with a little bit of flaws. He doesn't really wow you athletically. Again, that's why he's probably in that round 2 range. Yeah. But I wouldn't be mad at that selection at all. Do that every single year. The Eagles, I remember, took Landon Dickerson early. Last year they took Cam Jurgens early, and they didn't even plan to start him. I love the way they go about it. Develop them, and then if someone goes down due to injury, they're there. Could you imagine last year if the Bears did pay like a Teron Armstead, and the games that he was hurt, Braxton Jones fills in, or he earns the right tackle spot? Yeah. I think that's how you should go about it as far as taking tackles in round 2 or after in the draft.
Yeah, and I think that's why I feel like the last little bit I've been higher on Blake Freeland than I think most people I've heard talk about him, because toolsy through the roof, like one of the best like testing tackles so far. And from a true pass set point of view, I think he kind of falls into that. Hasn't had a whole lot of them in his career.
He has not. I literally just did a deep dive on him to see, and he has not had a lot of true pass sets.
But I thought last year, I thought he really held his own. Like I thought he looked good. I thought he looked quick off the line. I don't think that any like the Brandon Thorne said in that piece, I don't think anybody in this class has is there, that everybody has a ways to go and stuff to iron out. It was a little worrisome. Brandon Thorne mentioned that there was some stuff that he thought Braxton Jones did that might not be fixable. just stuff in his game that like the way he like kicks like lets people come across his face easier, which is a little bit over my head. I'm not that good of an evaluator, especially not for the offensive line position. I think there are certain positions that people probably do better for, but there are probably some dudes in this class that have a long way to go, and it would worry me if you're taking someone high in that second round that like might just be like a fatally flawed dude, I guess. But we are in that position where we definitely don't have a tackle on the roster right now. That I mean, like if we didn't take it theoretically, if the season started today, who is our left tackle? I mean, sorry, who is our right tackle?
Larry Borum, baby.
Larry Borum, Larry Borum, Alex Leatherwood. Maybe they give him another chance. I don't know, but yeah, either way, it's not good. But kind of getting back to what Snyder and was talking about, and Luke, you mentioned a little bit too, the idea of taking a flyer on a guy like Braxton Jones was a really good process. You should do that everywhere. And Luke, you mentioned drafting 2 offensive tackles. I think that's a great idea. If you don't draft Paris Johnson Donut right in round 1, and you do wait to round 2, you should absolutely draft two of them. Guy in round 2, guy in round 4, whatever it is.
You draft Paris Johnson or Darnell Wright, you should draft another one. Who cares?
That's a good point. I mean, worst case that happens is you have 2 good offensive tackles. Like that, you'll figure that out later.
And so I'm kind of and this is like so easy to say. Like I saw a lot of the same things as Brandon Thorne says. Like I felt very validated in that. Like I don't think Braxton Jones is like ever going to be this like amazing pass protector. Like if you watch him, you just see the limitations physically. So at that point, like I think he can be a part of an offensive line, like whether he's like your swing tackle or like your 5th best starter. But like me and Snyder talked about this too, just to kind of hand him the job after what he showed last year is like, I don't know if I like totally agree with that. I get the options weren't great. The alternatives weren't great, but like, I don't really think he did enough last year to feel great about him improving. Like it was pretty on par with what I saw from him coming out, and stuff that it's hard for them to get better at.
It's more about like Braxton Jones exceeded expectations. You throw a 5th round rookie out there, you expect him to be disastrous. And don't get me wrong, there was some flashes where it was, but there was also some flashes, where he exceeded it and he was maybe a little bit average. The thing is, you just can't. I think it's only Bears fans that are super high on him, because I think one of the first things Ryan Poles said at the end of the year press conference was that the unit as a whole needs to work on their pass protection, that they're really good run blockers. So I think, and the way Luke Getsy had to adjust with the low true pass sets, the coaching staff and Ryan Poles have both acknowledged how this unit struggles in pass protection. Yeah. I think it's just a lot of Bears fans are just really, really optimistic because, he looked really good on a very bad offensive line unit.
Yeah. I think, me being one of them, I was, I mean, I still kind of am. And I think to be the devil's advocate for Braxton Jones, you could argue as a 5th round rookie, even just playing what he did and starting every snap is impressive. By that merit, I don't think it's crazy to say that in his first year, it's easier when you have the talented backfield that the Bears did, but he was one of the better like run blocking tackles in the league last year.
That's what gets slept on. He was definitely like, it was his strength. He was like
100%. And to be honest, it was his strength in college too. He probably was a better pass protector in college because of like the level of competition you're going to get at Southern Utah, but he was a mauler in college. And I don't think it's a stretch to say, especially in the scheme, like the zone scheme, the Bears were running. I don't think that he was like at least top 15 run blocking tackle in the league last year, at least left tackle, maybe not in the entire league, but I think that was like, if that's his floor and he could even get marginally better on the pass side of things, then you'd be happy at him for the next 5 or 6 years. But like you said, man, smarter people than us have looked at it and said, it doesn't really look like he will get that much marginally better at the pass protection side of things. And I think Brandon Thorne like explained it well, where he was like, if that's the case, I don't think that anybody likes to switch from one side to another, but if that's the case,
I absolutely hate that logic that people are just saying, put him at right tackle. Like, when is that point to me an example of that ever working? When someone is struggling at the side they've always played in their entire career, just throw him to right tackle. Yeah. Like, I feel like people think that the right tackle is the less valuable. Maybe it is a little less valuable, but how does that help that offensive tackle get better if they
And I'm
can't.
with you. I don't really think that much of a value difference between the left and the right side in the modern game. I will say that there's a guy in the NFL that switched from left tackle to right tackle that just got, $22 million a year in Orlando.
Which was a gamble. Like that's pretty risky to
100%.
to have thrown that money. Like, yeah.
But anyway, to the point, Thorne was saying that if he's your worst tackle, then you're actually doing all right, because then you can slide some protection to him, you can help him out. You just need to make sure that you can get a guy that can be on an island against their best pass rushers. And I would say that nobody really thinks that at the moment that guy's on the roster. Now, is Paris Johnson that guy? It would be a projection. I think he's shown he has like the traits to do so, but I think because of that, I lean toward a Darnell Wright, because at the very with Braxton Jones, his floor is an amazing run defender. I mean, sorry, a run blocker. But it seems like Darnell Wright's floor is like a very fluid, smart, kind of nasty pass blocker, and that's why when you see someone like him getting mocked to us at 9, I don't hate that. If that's how the board falls and he's your guy at 9, if the Bears take him, that I'd be totally fine with that. I think perfect world, Bears trade from 9 to 16 or 17, and then Darnell Wright is that's your guy.
That would be the absolute dream scenario. I mean, I've been high on Darnell Wright for a while now. He's been my offensive tackle one since we did our first.
I was going to ask you, Steve. I want you to make your case.
Yeah, he's a card carrying member of the fan club.
If you just watch him, he just doesn't get beat. It doesn't always look the prettiest, I'll admit. And sometimes, he does out in space isn't as fluid as Paris Johnson, but he just doesn't get beat. And he did it in the SEC. He did it against Will Anderson. Absolutely shut down Will Anderson. Shut down B.J. Ojolari. Shut down Brenton Cox. All these guys that he was just dominating. I was just watching some Senior Bowl one-on-ones today, and he was dominating there too against Will McDonald, who gives him probably a little bit more speed than he's used to seeing. Byron Young at Tennessee. Oh, not that he was on Tennessee. Never mind. But a lot of good SEC pass rushers he dominated. Just his heavy hands. He once he gets his hands on you, it's over. I don't know. I just feel like the way he plays is just perfect for the modern game. So I think
he's reactive too. I think he does a good job of getting wide if it's a speed and an outside rush. And when people try and get handsy and cut inside, sometimes he just chop those arms and falls on guys. His kit is really, really good.
The other thing that I liked, there was a couple. I was watching the LSU game, so he's going against B.J. Ojolari, who's a speed rusher, good length, speed, and then the next rep he's going up against a D tackle. I forget who it was. It may have been Jacqueline Roy, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It was a D tackle, more of a power player, and the way he adjusts his pass set to deal with the speed versus deal with the power was just really impressive. The way he could just see that and know that going into the rep what he was going to do and who he was going up against and the way to counter it. So that kind of smarts also help maybe like him.
I actually heard it was during the Senior Bowl and his preparation. Yeah. He talked about what he does. He is a spreadsheet for everyone he goes up against, every move they've ever shown, and that's how he prepares. And you see it. Will Anderson was the perfect example. I know everyone points to that game, but if you watch Will Anderson and how Will Anderson tries to win, Darnell Wright took that away and said, "Okay, beat me with your left hand," and he could not do it. Will Anderson couldn't do it. So, and I think the most underrated part. Not underrated part about Darnell Wright because it's what he's best at, but the most underrated part about tackles transitioning from college to the NFL, many of those guys are so light and they're just not strong enough to hold up against grown ass men in the NFL. That is not a concern for Darnell Wright. That dude is the pro ready anchor, and that coming into the league is just it's just a step up from everyone else. So that's I hear you, Steve. In terms of a guy you expect to be good sooner than later, I'd probably lean towards the Darnell Wrights. I'd probably lean towards the Skoronskis. But at the same time, Paris Johnson does have some rare traits that if he puts it all together, man, he could be a top 5, top 10 tackle in the NFL.
Yep.
I think also it's not just offensive tackles; it's all position. People will look at a guy like Darnell Wright and Peter Skoronski is another good example of this, who have really good tape, and you say this guy's so pro ready, and then they kind of equate that to having a low ceiling. And I think that's just kind of human nature. But I think Darnell Wright does actually have, still some room to grow too. He's not just going to be who he is and just be a good at tackle. He has room to grow. He showed it at the combine with his athleticism. He had a good 3-cone shuttle at his pro day too. So I think just because he's a solid right tackle day one doesn't mean he can't even get better than he is right now. So that's another reason why I like him. I think he also still has room to improve as well. And like you said, the anchor is something that's you can't really teach. And we saw with Braxton Jones, he can get into a weight room all he wants. Sometimes it doesn't really matter. It's just how strong you are.
We always talk about guys like they can get stronger, they could do this and this. And it's like, how often does that really happen? Like the fact that the security is already there with Darnell Wright, that's not going to be a problem for him at all. Like, and I hear some Bears fans talk about like, oh, well, he'll have to slim down if the Bears scheme. Like, why would you? He's already super athletic. Like, why would you want to take 100%. That away from him? I don't know, but yes, I'm totally with you there, Steve. I think it is a little like players that are good right now is a good thing. Like, it's not a bad thing. I think sometimes we think it might be because they don't have room to grow, but like you said, I do think Darnell Wright has room to grow. But also, like, the pro readiness of it is kind of why the draft's important. Like, you want guys to be good right away because they're on a bargain. Like, that's the whole reason why the draft is really important.
I think when they're good right now, you almost look at them and say, like, if they have some errors to their game, you go, oh, if we just clean those up, like, imagine what they'd be. And you look at someone that's like a little bit more nuanced and technical, like a Darnell Wright, and you go, okay, well, like maybe he's approaching what his ceiling would already be. But and to be fair, like maybe that's true sometimes, but him going out and testing like the athlete like he did really, really puts a feather in his cap. Like I think he was like a 9'5", 9'6", like RAS guy. Like you're not getting like this really like high floor, low ceiling guy. Like it's seemingly you're getting like a pretty high floor, like high ceiling guy. And that's kind of like what you look for in the first round. So I think like some of that first round hype that you'll start to see over the next, man, we're only 3 weeks away, which is crazy.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. But
I wanted to get you guys' take on the Bears receiver room because me and Snyder talk about this all the time too. About like Snyder, I mean, you can make your case. You've been like leading this charge. Like if it was up to Snyder, he would take JSN, and that's largely that's largely what we think about the rest of the Bears receiver room, along with actually loving JSN. But what is your guys' state on the Bears receiver room? Obviously, they have DJ Moore, but like Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool, like they're obviously good. They're obviously going to be better 1 or 2 and 3 pieces behind DJ Moore. But are they future pieces? Are they long-term pieces? Like, would you invest more in that position, knowing that some hard decisions are going to come?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are like obsessed with Marvin Harrison, and they think we don't need to take a receiver because of it. But banking on a draft next year is such a bad idea, just because who knows what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I was a huge Mooney guy, but man, I wish he was better this year. I think a lot of stuff this year probably led to the whole offense not being as good as it is. But like, I would say that my opinion of the receiver room could be summed up by saying if JSN's there at 9, I'd take him.
Hmm.
I think DJ Moore is a really natural fit in the slot, and I honestly think that both Claypool and Mooney make more sense on the outside. I just think they've played better football there. I think Mooney's been best in the NFL and best in college when he was on the outside, and I think that DJ Moore probably is a little bit better in the slot, but I think he can kind of go anywhere.
Right.
But, it would be a lot of, like, hoping that Claypool would be the guy that he was in his first year, and then, like, hoping that Mooney is, like, the player that, we've seen flashes of, and maybe they could be, but I would be on board with taking JSN at 9 and making sure that room is a strength as opposed to a question mark.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I love DJ Moore. DJ Moore's really excited about that. The way I look at it is, and I don't know if you could take if JSN at 9 just because you have so many needs, but I will say this: I don't think Chase Claypool or Darnell Mooney factor into your evaluation of this draft class or what you should do at 9 at all. They're guys that is nice to have, especially I think Darnell Mooney is a little bit better. Darnell Mooney is a nice player to have in your team. He should not be impacting your decision making in the draft. So if they have JSN as the top guy on their board and he's up at 9, I'd be fine with taking him. I'd also be fine with them passing and because I mean on my board I know I have JSN pretty substantially higher than Paris Johnson. But if they took Paris Johnson and JSN was on the board, I wouldn't really fault them for that because it's such a huge need and everything. But if he's their highest guy on their board and they take him, I'm fine with that.
What do you think, Snides?
It's kind of weird because I think I am actually more optimistic about the Bears' 3 wide receivers than most. I think everyone feels the same way about DJ Moore. He's pretty much good at everything. Good route runner. He's solid.
Soft
good after
hands.
the catch. Yeah, great hands. Vertical threat. He's fast. Very athletic. He's set in stone for, you have to do under contract wise at least 3 years. He's probably going to get an extension. Probably going to be. Hopefully, he retires a Bear. He's there for the long run. Claypool, in my opinion, I didn't hate the process of the trade. It kind of sucks that it ended up being pick 32, so it looks a lot worse than it was. That's frustrating to think about it. I am maybe I'm a little bit biased. I'm just very optimistic about Claypool. The man is 6'4", 240 pounds. He is a freak athlete. He just needs to play to his size. And
he's shown that he can. Like his top end tape in the NFL against NFL corners is legit Pro Bowl quality stuff.
Call me crazy. When I look at Chase Claypool, I see the T. Higgins upside. I see the Mike Evans upside. I see the Michael Pittman upside. Now, yes. Now, if keeping it real, he has to show it this year. He can't. He needs to show that. He's on the hot seat. Yep. I also feel really good about Darnell Mooney. I think he's above average after the catch. He's really good intermediately and deep. He's shifty down there. I think the unit as a 3 can be very good. But if it were me, because I think the wide receiver room and the position is the second most important position in the NFL. I think the way the game is designed, it's more favorable to the quarterback, and then it goes wide receiver. Because the quarterback, it's tough to play, man. You don't know what route they're running. You can't hold. You can't hit hard. The game is designed for the quarterback and the wide receiver. So if you can get elite in that room, I think that's where you should start. And as much as I'm optimistic about that room, I'll still take JSN at 4, and then as my wide receiver 4. Not at 4. I'm sorry, as my wide receiver 4. And just see what happens. Maybe he becomes wide receiver 2 right away. Maybe he's on a rotation right away, and then you figure it out at the end of the year what you do as far as contract extension, and that'd be a great problem to have.
Yep.
Would you see them potentially, if they did take JSN, exploring a trade with either Claypool or Mooney, seeing what they can get? I'm not saying that I'm not saying that they have to, but I'm just
There's no way they'd trade Claypool for less than what they got, because that's what they would
in and out.
Yeah, they wouldn't get a second round pick for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think they're kind of.
What are you looking at?
I got you. I think they're kind of stuck with him. It's kind of like sunk cost at this point.
Yeah.
But the thing with Mooney, I don't really know how much you get for him either, right? He's coming off an injury. He's been solid. He's a late round pick, undersized guy. I don't know. I'm high on Darnell Mooney. I think he's shown a lot more than Claypool, in my opinion. I want him for what he is, just a complimentary piece. I think there's value in that. And we saw it this year too, with guys like Jacoby Myers. They're not costing a whole lot. The Christian Kirk thing was an anomaly. No one was willing to pay that much besides the Jaguars. I think that market's going to come way down.
That market came down to earth.
The receivers that hit the free. Yeah. So I think I'm kind of the belief that I think Claypool is what he is. I think we've seen 3 years. We know what he is. He's inconsistent. That's who he's just going to be. I don't know. Maybe I'm more pessimistic. Obviously he has the tools, but it's he hasn't been in that bad of situations to not put it together consistently for a year. I feel like that's just kind of who he is. So I would be more comfortable of deciding right now that DJ Moore, and I would hope to try to get Mooney at least for the next 2 or 3 years, get him on a similar contract as Jacoby Myers. And I feel like that in that situation, if I took a JSN, Claypool would be the odd man out, because in my opinion, I kind of know what Claypool is and I know what he isn't. And I feel like if you add JSN to that room, obviously the offensive line needs to get better, but Justin Fields has no excuses anymore. He's got weapons on weapons.
Yeah.
Actually, this might even be a good segue into it too, because we were talking about this before. Is that, let's say, the Bears are in the market to draft a receiver just to add talent to that room, but they don't get JSN in the first round. Maybe it's a Paris Johnson, it's a Skoronski. What does the board, your view of the rest of the receiver class look like? Because I was saying today, I'm just kind of finishing up my rankings on the receivers I think will make the board. I think I got 23, 24. Well, yeah, but that's really just watch 2 highlight videos and then 5 versus tapes of like individual games to get an idea of what they are, like snap in, snap out. But like if one of those like 2nd round picks or 3rd round picks come around, is there any guys that you guys have your eye on that you think like would be a good fit?
I'm curious to hear Steve's take because we've talked about literally like trenches only. Like I really don't know if the receivers are in his in the eye of his beholder.
So if we're talking that 2nd, 3rd round range,
I really 2nd, 3rd, first.
I'm looking at my board now. I really love Jaden Reed. I have him higher than most people. I feel like I think he's a guy who Michigan State's offense was trash.
He visited today. He visited the Bears
today. Yep, I think he's a perfect fit. If he was in a different offense, we'd be talking about him differently. He showed that at the Senior Bowl. He was dominating those one-on-ones. If we're so that's more of a slot guy. If we're going bigger guys, A.T. Perry and Cedric Tillman, I really like.
I got a good one, man. What do you guys? If you had to pick Cedric Tillman or Jalen Hyatt, if you had to take a Tennessee guy, who do you take?
Cedric Tillman, easy. I'm not a Jalen Hyatt guy.
I don't know what to think about Jalen Hyatt. The guy, you can't even project like his change of motion or his his yards after catch. His
usage of that role was just fake. Like it was just like not a real.
Dude, they play that funny little like 2 people way out in the boundary, like outside the hash, and they run that like smash concept. But like legit, like I do not know what to think about Jalen Hyatt because to some extent, what he did. He probably did better than almost any receiver in the class, but he legit did one thing. Can he run away from people in the NFL like he did in college?
I heard a stat today, or not today, like the other day. He only faced press coverage 63 times in his entire college career. I think like the top 5 receivers on PFF's board range from like 200 to 400 snaps against press coverage. He faced 63 in his entire NFL career. So it's like total projection. Like you have no idea. I just don't think you can do it.
Sorry, Tom. What did he weigh in at? It was 170.
I got it.
177.
Yeah, I think Steve's right on the money.
Right, and then my thing is, if you're weighing 170, I think you should be running in the low 4.3s.
176. I would say to some extent, man, the combine numbers this year felt weird. It felt like nobody ran as fast as I thought they should have. It was a little weird. But, we drafted Darnell Mooney, and he weighed into the combine at 176. Yeah, but to be fair, Darnell Mooney was a 4.3 guy.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. So it's like, okay, you have that slim frame. You're really worried about the physicality, right? So if you're, DJ Moore running, 200 pounds running, a 4.4, that's good because he's bulky. Yeah, it's bulky. Now you have Jalen Hyatt, who's almost 30 pounds lighter, running that same time. It's like, how are you going to hold up to the NFL physicality?
You can't ask him to run a dig. You can't ask him to run an in. You can't ask him to run a slant. It's like it would literally just be like, hey, can you come and take the top off the defense? And if that's the case, like there are players that like a Mingo that you could come and get 3 rounds later that honestly I think play just as good. Like there are a lot of names that I don't think people love that I have over Jalen Hyatt. I
think the Bears have shown too that like I don't know, like I think they have a type for sure. I think it's pretty similar to, maybe this is just a hunch and I've tweeted about this, but I think they do fall into that Packers line of thinking that they don't like smaller receivers. Like Mooney, they inherited. Like every other move that they've made has told us they like bigger bodies at receiver. Yep. Like this is not the class for that. There's really not that many. Like, there's obviously it's like some late round guys with like the bigger body late round guys, but like the top end of it, they're all smaller receivers for the most part. So like that also has to like factor into kind of what we think they're thinking.
Do you think that would push like a Josh Downs or a Zay Flowers down their board?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be interested in any of those guys, to be honest.
I'd agree. I'd agree with that. Yeah. And going back to Jalen Hyatt a little bit, just playing like devil's advocate, because I would take Cedric Tillman over him, and I don't love Jalen Hyatt whatsoever. But just playing devil's advocate, he is very, very, very fast. And I know he only ran like a 4.4. He only ran a 4.4 at the combine.
Yeah, I agree.
But if you watch him, like he plays faster than a 4.4.
He does.
Tape, when he gets even like, with the guy, it's over.
It's over.
It is
like,
over.
He's a legit deep threat. So, he's not a complete wide receiver, and I don't love him at all. But he has one skill, and it's probably the most valuable skill that you can have. He has that speed and that breakaway. So, and also Justin Fields throws a great deep ball. So, if I could get Jalen Hyatt in around like 4, I would love it. I'm not drafting Jalen Hyatt in round 2 or late
No,
round one.
and
where
it
you might
doesn't
go.
help that I actually love Cedric Tillman. I literally only have 4 people in the class with a higher grade.
And if you like Jalen Hylett in round 2, why wouldn't you just take Tyler Scott in round 4 or 5?
There you go.
And he does the exact same thing, just as good probably.
Marvin Mims, Tyler
Marvin
Scott,
Mims,
like name any of those guys. Like I feel like it's just like not that big of a difference. I feel like the real difference was their production, like their actual like yards. But if you look, like Jalen Hyatt was afforded like the opportunity of a lifetime to just like skyrocket your production. Like, and that role just doesn't exist in the NFL.
that Alabama game, man. You take that Alabama game out.
They got to match up on the same safety like 8 times. Who like the dude? I think it's DeMarco Helms or whatever runs like a 4.6 something. It's like, all right, like that's not going to happen in the NFL.
Yeah. All right, we got a question here. Any thoughts on Jordan Addison? Anyone want to take that?
I love Jordan Addison. I think if you weighed 180 pounds, people would be talking about him differently. And I think, again, it was that weird, like the combine, like if Jordan Addison ran a 4.3, like he'd be in my contention for the top receiver in the class. As it stands, I just have him slightly over Quentin Johnson. Mine goes Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison, and then Quentin Johnson and Zay Flowers, like kind of in that next tier. But I love Jordan Addison. I think he's a really nuanced route runner. I think similar to Jalen Hyatt, like aside from the 40-yard dash, when he gets even with you, he's past you. Like he really is like fast like that. And like he, 2 seasons of unbelievable competition, like legitimately dominating. I mean, I think he moved to the outside when he got to the USC, and I thought he did better when he was inside. But I have him as the second receiver on the board, and I got him in the first round grade.
Steve, what are your thoughts on Jordan Addison? Because I feel like we both agreed that the combine was concerning for him.
The combine was very concerning, but I feel like I'm having the same conversations now about Jordan Addison that I did with Calvin Ridley when he was coming out. Really good, productive wide receiver in college. Went to the combine, little undersized. Went to the combine, was just straight up poor. Had a poor combine performance, and suddenly no one wanted him anymore. I didn't move him down. I mean, I moved him down my rankings a little bit, but that was more Jackson Smith and Jigba jumping him than Jordan Addison falling down. So I still like him. I think he's probably one of the best route runners in this class. Probably him and Jackson Smith and Jigba up, and that's more valuable to me than a 4.5. Whatever he ran, 4.53, whatever it was. I can't remember. I think it was like a 4.49. It wasn't even that bad. So I really like Jordan Addison. And Luke, you mentioned like he played a lot more inside at Pitt, and he was a lot more effective. Had an injury at USC, so I think if he came out after his junior year, I think he'd be the consensus like number 1 in this board, because his junior year stats were almost as good as Jackson Smith and Jigba's last year 2021 stats. Like they actually compare very favorably in terms of stats. So I still like him a lot, but I don't think the Bears are going to draft him for Tommy, what you said, just the size profile, but also just I don't think the value is there at 9, and he won't make it to our next pick.
Yeah, that's fair. I like him too. I think honestly, the 40 wasn't even what concerned me. It was the rest of it. Like his jumps were bad. His 10-yard split was bad. His agilities at the or at his pro day were okay. Like and not to say that like that's gonna like drastically change my rankings and like I'm gonna like put him as like a 3rd round pick. No, but it's like I just get a little concerned of betting on an outlier from that regard. Like I'm way more to the numbers maybe than I should, because his tape is awesome. Like you guys said, like he's very pro ready, runs very good routes. Like those are usually the guys I gravitate towards, but like he is an outlier in some ways that he's that small and he's like below average athlete. Like,
yeah, he was small, like small.
Yes.
He was like, I think he weighed less than, he was like what,
173 pounds in the 3rd percentile. So you're right. Like it's a pretty big outlier.
Yeah. It really is a shame, and like it's one of those things. Like I think it's always been an issue where you try and marry like what you see on tape. Get out of here. You try and marry what you see on tape with like what you see at the combine, and like, you don't want to be a straight combine person. And like you love the tape, and then he comes and what was his RAS? Like was he like a 5 or a 6?
Yeah, he was somewhere around there.
Yeah,
tough.
I do have a number. If this kind of did sway me in the other direction. So on PFF's podcast, their football podcast, they kind of revealed some of their GPS numbers, and he did track as one of the faster receivers in the class. So he just played faster than he timed, I guess.
Oh
yeah.
My notes on him here are Little slim, but really fast off the
Yeah.
line. Actually, just fast as a whole. When he separates the top of the routes, is absolutely exceptional. And he's got nice rack, which I think, like guys like like Josh Downs or like some of the other faster guys in the class, I don't think have as good as rack as him, and that's why I'm kind of willing to bet on him. But it is like worrisome that he showed up to the combine, which is like, yo, as a professional, this is your chance to make your money, and he bombed.
Yeah, I know it is a little concerning, but at the same time, like I had him as my wide receiver 1 before the combine, so like I really did like his tape.
Yeah,
my gut feeling is telling me that he's going to end up a Lion or a Viking.
A Lion, yeah. Keep thinking it.
Yeah, dude, and like the Vikings, they need that second wide receiver to cover Justin Jefferson. I think he's going to take that Calvin Ridley type of fall, but I think he's going to have a good career. Yeah, he might not be a superstar, but I think he's going to be I think he has like great number wide receiver too.
Do any of us have Quentin Johnson over Jordan Addison?
I do right now, but I did not factor in the rest of Quentin Johnson's testing, in which it might drop him lower. I'm having such a hard time with Quentin Johnson, man. I don't.
Same.
Every time I want to buy in, I don't know if you guys saw that stat that was out there yesterday about
contested catches, man.
It was just like, oh my God.
My brain.
There's a horrible track record.
Why is that? My only thought is that maybe if you're like a big majority of your yards come when you're not creating separation, that maybe it's a little bit of fool's gold.
Oh, it 100% is. Like that I like kind of knew, but at the same time, like I don't think Quentin Johnson was like solely a contested catch guy. Like I like the way he separated.
I thought he was a great separated catch.
Yeah,
I think he does a good job. He's like some of the Ohio State receivers do a really good job of catching with their hands and then catching with their body when it makes sense. And it feels like Quentin Johnson catches with his body way too much.
Bro, I told Tom that months ago. I'm looking at his contested catch rate. I'm watching the film. Like what he does well, he boxes his defenders out like a power forward. Like he definitely like leverages his body very, very well. But he doesn't grab that ball. Like he ain't no T. Higgins, DeAndre Hopkins. He is not a dog with that ball, bro. It's like 90% of the impressive catches I've seen from him were all body catches. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know. He really early on. He really reminded me with Christian Watson. Freak athlete.
Yeah.
Very good after the catch.
In my notes, I have Kevin White. ...
That too. I think the thing is with Quentin Johnson, I think he has the ability to develop into a complete route runner. Maybe his testing tells me otherwise. I'm just saying on film, he looked very fluid, side to side and straight line speed. And I think Christian Watson tested similar. So, but then you got also this 2 wide receivers there that didn't play to their size against lower tier competition.
Straight up.
Yeah. I mean, to me, like Quentin Johnson, and Snyder, you kind of mentioned it, the most impressive thing to me was his, yards after catch. Like he's so explosive with the ball in his hands.
The first guy never tackles him.
Yeah, and maybe that's playing in the Big 12. I don't know, but that's something that he could do day one in the NFL. It would not surprise me at all. Like if we saw the Bears big board, that he would be their wide receiver 1 of this. Well, maybe Jackson Smith and Jigba, but Quentin Johnson would at least be 2. I feel like because he is a bigger body, and has the athleticism and everything like that. So, but yeah, I go back and forth on him. I gotta go back and watch him again because. I know my opinion will probably be different every time I watch him, but I think right now he's like my wide receiver 4.
Whoa! So wait, who is your top 3? I don't mean to be giving away your takes like for free. I'm curious.
For free. Yeah, no. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnson.
Okay, that's actually fair. That's fair. I mean, those are my top 4, but I just have them in different. order.
I think I'd be surprised. I mean, I know some people have some love for some other guys, but I would be surprised. It seems to me that there's a top 5 and then there's a bit of a drop off. At least like that's how it we've heard from most people. And I think it's JSN, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnson, Zay Flowers, and then I would imagine depending on some people are high on Jalen Hyatt, but I have Josh Downs at that 5 spot.
I have Josh Downs as well.
I think honest to God, if Josh Downs had any yards after catch ability, I don't see the real difference between him and Zay Flowers. But he kind of gives me like Tyler Lockett vibes that as soon as he makes a catch, he's done with the play. Like he's just going to get down. Whereas
Like he holds A in Madden.
yeah, exactly. I'm not fumbling this. I'm getting down. I'm living to see another play. And I think that Zay Flowers offers a lot more in the yards after catch category. That's why I have him higher.
Sure.
But I think that, I think people are sleeping a little bit on Josh Downs, and like they're kind of securely my top 5. And then right below that, I have A.T. Perry and Cedric Tillman.
Yeah. I have Tillman at 5. So Tillman would be right
So you have Josh Flowers at 6? I mean, yeah.
Josh Downs.
Josh Downs.
I have Josh Downs at 9, but I feel like that's too low. I feel like
He's a lot closer to 9 for me, Steve, than he is the top guys. I'll say, like, there's a pretty noticeable gap for him. And that's not even like it was just kind of his usage. Like he's only used as like a slot receiver. Like you could talk yourself into Jordan Addison, even Zay Flowers, like being on the outside with either traits or they've shown it on tape. Like you've never seen that from Josh Downs. Like he's solely a slot receiver. And like, I know Jackson Smith and Jigba is solely a slot receiver, but I think Jackson Smith and Jigba has traits at least to like, he could play on the outside. Like he's big enough to play on the outside towards, I don't really see that for Josh Downs.
Yeah. So he was 8, not 9, but still lower than everyone else. But yeah.
Only true X is QJ reliably keeps present last. I don't know. I honestly don't even know if I think that's true. I think A.T. Perry does all right versus press. I think Rashee Rice does all right versus press. I was high on Rashee Rice, and then I think he tested the way that he did, and I kind of fell on him, and I went back and watched some more tape, and I'm a little bit higher on him again. But I don't know if that's true, but I think that like that coupled with the athleticism, the production, and some of the rack stuff is why like Quentin Johnson has the is in the position that he's in as far as like most of people's like rankings of him.
I will say that he might not be. I don't think he's the only X, but if you're looking for an X wide receiver this class, there's like 3.
Yeah.
There's not many.
Michael Wilson, man, don't sleep.
Michael Wilson.
I mean, not that like he's like a proven like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take him to be my number 1 X receiver, but like in terms of a guy that like you can get in the mid rounds that can like be capable. I know he's got some limitations, but like he's intriguing, man.
Yeah, he went to the Senior Bowl and did not look out of place.
Not at all. He was like one of the best receivers there, honestly.
Yep. Yeah, he made.
I gotta watch more because one game I watched, I was not impressed. Really,
which game do you know? Which game you watched?
I can't remember. It was like right after the Senior Bowl, and I can't remember which game it was. But I gotta watch more because everyone is really impressed by him, and I must have just watched a bad game or something.
I gotta get your guys' take on because me and Snyder talked about this in our last episode. The whole scheme fit thing that just kind of blew over Bears Twitter and just started an absolute war. And I kind of want to get your guys' take on this because we talked a lot about the offense, but like, what about the defense? Like, are you buying into the defensive line and kind of the thresholds that they look at for like their edge defenders and interior? It's more so their edge defenders than honestly their interior because like
I agree.
Like the undersized 3 technique is kind of the guys they look for, but like I know some people are saying like, well, McDonald, BJ Ojolari, Nolan Smith, like they're not going to be on the Bears' radar. Like, are you guys buying into that?
You go ahead, Steve.
I'll say that I buy more into the scheme fit on the offensive line than I do the defense.
Oh, you stole the words out of my mouth. I think they have a vision, especially because when you're on offense, you kind of dictate how it goes, and you want to make sure you have the guys that can make it work the way you were. But on the defensive line, especially defensive tackle, maybe a little bit more it matters on edge because being a 4-3, like you really can't have a guy getting rushed off the ball on run plays. You can't have a guy that's too small. So I think like something like a Nolan Smith would probably like worry the Bears, but by the same metric, like if you start him in his career on just pass rush downs, like it's similar to the Kalijah Kancey thing with Aaron Donald, where you say, look, someone can do it, so you have the idea. But like someone like a Nolan Smith, like you just look at a Micah Parsons and say, like that guy, like he has no issues defending the run at his size, at a very similar size in the NFL. And if someone like that can cut the mold, then other people can follow.
Here's the thing about that. So if Matt Eberflus wants a defensive end who, is big enough to set the edge and run defense, if that's very, very important to him, and that's what he's looking for, it's Will Anderson and then Nolan Smith is number 2 in this class for actually run defense and setting the edge as an edge defender.
100%.
At least in my opinion.
Hey, bro, that dude can defend the run. Like if you watch
him. So at least in my opinion. So if that's what you're looking for, if you're like, okay, we need a guy who can set the edge, why not Nolan Smith? I know he's 235 or whatever he was.
He
I
can
can't
set
remember.
the edge
But
better than Tyree Wilson can set the edge.
easily, it's not close. Same thing.
Yes.
I said this today. If Tyree Wilson's there in the second, I might take him.
I saw that. That was funny. Yeah, I think yeah, he is a little overrated, but the potential with him is
Well,
the
at
move,
least
so
for
I
the
can
top
see that.
10 conversation.
No,
But I do think Nolan Smith is a stud, and it should absolutely be in play at 9 for the Bears. But I don't know.
That's the thing. That's the thing. For defensive line, I think that's a great point, Steve, when you brought up about the offensive line. Because offensive line, you're playing in unison. You can't really change your scheme around one guy. It's like the whole Orlando Brown thing. While I kind of disagreed that you would value the run scheme before pass protection, that was the part I disagree with. But at the same time, you cannot fit Orlando Brown into your scheme because he's just not physically capable. Whereas the defensive line is one-on-one matchups. You're not playing in you. There's sometimes you are on stunts and schemes like that, but the value in a defensive lineman is, can they win one-on-one? And that is what you should be asking yourself, sort of to preclude yourself from taking a Nolan Smith, who's second best at that, in my opinion, is nuts.
And it's funny how probably the two best edge rush defenders in the class are two of the guys that have well, I guess to some extent Will Anderson's a little bit bigger, but either way, those guys your Tyree Wilsons or your Miles Murphys, those guys that are the bigger people you expect to just one arm their tackle back into the backfield and stop the run that way. They don't do it as well as some of the smaller guys.
They don't. I don't think they do it nearly as well as Nolan Smith is from a technical standpoint. And then obviously the results. I mean, he's the cream of the crop. You can compare him to anybody in this class. That dude throws tackles around. He's a beast in the run game.
He was two gapping at Georgia. Everyone is two gapping, and at 235 pounds, he was doing that in the SEC.
And if you go to his explosion stats, from the RAS stuff, everything points to him not being overwhelmed by that kind of stuff. And I said, now there are people in the NFL that have cut that mold and said, hey, we're going to come in a little bit undersized. And all these guys were oh, well, he may be doing that against SEC talent. But when you come to the NFL, everybody's bigger and everybody's stronger. And it's well.
At the same time, too, even if he wasn't as good against the run, which I don't think will be the case, I just need him to not be bad. Just be okay. And your pass rush upside is so much more valuable and worth to where I don't really care how well you defend the run. You just can't be terrible there. That's kind of how I feel about Will McDonald. I know Will McDonald's actually not that bad of a run defender. He's not great by any means. He's undersized, but out of the second round guys, or at least the guys that are getting talked about, he would be my top target by far.
I said the other day that I think time's going to show that he's going to end up as one of the top 3 or 4 pass rushers in this draft.
Awesome. He's awesome. I'm a big fan of him.
I'm not as high as Will McDonald because I think he is more of a liability against the run. But I will say, I'm also not a huge fan of these second round edges.
It's a bad
spot
to get him. Yeah, it's a bad spot to get him.
It's either take one early or wait till day 3, pretty much.
Right.
I think we probably should talk about what everybody thinks about Jalen Carter at this point.
Yeah.
Is there so? I don't think that anybody in recent memory. I mean, Laramie Tunsil got caught with a gas mask bomb, which isn't great, but this might even be worse. And I know that some people have said that they're his teammates have come out and said good things, and I know that Dan Campbell from the Lions came out and said he talked to some teammates and insinuated pretty thoroughly that maybe his teammate might have thrown him under the bus and said some bad things. But if you're there at 9 and Jalen Carter's on the board, what are you thinking, Snides?
It's actually funny. I was running some errands yesterday, and I'm a big caller on ESPN 1000. Anytime I drive, I listen. Sometimes it gets hard to listen to the same music over and over, so I just call ESPN 1000, and it kind of goes back to our offensive line discussion. How I said the only way you feel really optimistic is if you take a tackle there at 9. But do you risk passing on a Jalen Carter and Jackson Smith and Jigba because of that? And I think it was Yurko. He's if Jalen Carter is there, he said he won't be there, but if he is there, you take him. And he is one of the blue chip defenders in this. 100%. He is a perfect fit. He is the dude that will allow, your investments at the linebacker position, debate how you want, if that was good or not. Tremaine Edmonds was signed to be that Mike, cover inside the numbers,
Yep.
intermediately deep, right? And be that sure tackler, very disciplined against the run, and he has the length. TJ Edwards, high IQ, high motor, sure
Awesome.
tackler, right? Jalen Carter is like your Warren Sapp, the Tony Dungy Tampa 2. Your Tommy Harris, the Lovey
the
Smith
boys off.
Tampa 2. He eats interior offensive linemen. And when he does that, your investments at the linebacker position will function how you intend them to.
It's a good way to look at it.
The defensive line, the way it's on paper right now, your investments at linebacker are not going to function how you intended.
If they're getting washed all the time and that guard is getting his hand, if you, like to some extent, if the guard gets his hand on Tremaine Edmonds, you probably already lost the rep because you want him like flowing sideline to sideline and getting to the edge. And
yes,
Jalen Carter, man, it's crazy how slippery he is. Not only is he strong, but like it just feels like every time someone tries to touch him, they don't. Like his tape, I don't think there's much like debate to it. His tape is absolutely the best tape of any defender in the class, and like might be the best tape of any player in the class.
Yeah, he's my number one player. Like
Same.
Yeah, so I think it really just matters like about their own investigation, like what they find. Like I think it's so hard for us to speak looking on the outside looking in because we don't know like what they found, what they really know about him. I mean, I think if I had to comment just like about his situation, I think he's gotten like the worst advice ever. Like to do that pro day. Like, why would he do that? Like, that was just horrible decision. Like, I totally understand whatever he was going through. Like, something tragic happened. Totally get that. But like, why would if you weren't prepared? Why would you do that? Like, that just
and like his tape was so good that he could have disappeared from the map. Yeah. He could have disappeared from the map until draft day and been fine. Yo, and then I'm not meeting with teams outside the top 10.
Team, like,
what are you doing, Jalen Carter?
Like, I don't think that's like that. Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal because like I get why he'd do it, but like I think it's just a little.
He's got bad advice.
Look when you're like actively saying, "Hey, I'm not meeting with you." Like,
you're call people that you have good character, and people with good character don't not answer the door when people come knocking, kind of thing.
Yeah. To me, that I'm not taking meetings with teams outside the top 10. That means the Eagles have told him that they're drafting him if he's there. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And I think
the Bears.
Well, I think the Eagles have definitely said it, but like I think the Bears and the Eagles both being at 9-10 is like there's no way in hell that he's not that one of those teams isn't drafting him. So like why would I waste my time? But at the same time, if I don't know whatever team wants to trade up in front of the Bears to 8 to get him. Why wouldn't you meet with him? But yeah, I mean, if it's me, like I said, he's my player one in this draft class. I would take him in a heartbeat. I would sprint the podium to get him. I don't think he gets past Detroit, unfortunately.
I've actually heard from some people that cover Detroit that they don't think they're going to draft him. Like Dan Campbell's too big of a character guy.
Dan Campbell came out and insinuated very heavily that he heard some bad stuff about Jalen Carter.
That quote didn't sound good. But
he was like, "Hey, I talked to one of his teammates and I found out something very interesting." And then someone kind of pressed and was like, "What do you mean interesting?" And if it was even remotely good, he was
why wouldn't he say it?
Had some really good stuff to say about him. He goes, "Well, it was just interesting."
I'd be hesitant to listen to what coaches and GMs are saying right now. That might be hey Seahawks at 5, don't pick Jalen. You don't want Jalen Carter.
I would never draft him.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't really take too much stock.
That's true. I never actually thought about the Lions as an opportunity. Man, that would fucking suck if they got Jalen Carter. But the only person I looked at in the top 10 was the Seahawks. I thought if they make it past the Seahawks, he'll be there at 9 for the Bears. Man, what a world it would be if he fell to the Bears at 9 after trading back.
This is going to be a Aaron Donald situation. He's going to go 8. The Falcons are going to pick him at 8 or something, and we're going to just miss him.
God, dude.
That's funny. I was just talking to Tom about that. I remember tuning in live to that draft in 2015 being 1 pick away from Aaron Donald. And then the very next draft, 1 pick away from Leonard Williams. Always dreamed about them two being on the Bears interior. It's funny, the year after we trade up a couple spots, we ended up with Leonard Floyd. But it's funny. I know different regime from
Dude,
the
we might sign him again.
I was just gonna say.
right.
No, but I know. I think. I mean, again, you never really know what happened behind closed doors. You know, it's funny to compare body cams if that's where we're at in the world, but Jalen Carter's body cam looked a lot better than Stetson Bennett's did. That guy looks like a prick in his body cam. I couldn't believe it. But you know, I would say if he's there at 9, like, oh,
Yeah,
man.
I mean, like at face value, like Steve said, like running the podium. I just don't know enough about.
He's the best player in the draft. He's
Right?
the best
Yeah,
player in the draft.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
you know, and he's been the best player in the draft.
Right.
He did it against the best competition. As far people, the word fit has been beaten to death the last month and a half, and there's not a single box he doesn't check. I mean, I guess he kind of looked bad at his pro day, but get him in through a training camp, he'll be fine. I think I kind of agree, man. If he's there at 9, you kind of have to run to the podium.
Yeah.
I think a lot of experts agree with that. I think we agree with that. It's just I think a lot of people don't think he's going to be there at 9. I think people that are really like have like connections inside, you know, Hallis Hall. I don't think they think he's going to be there.
Yeah.
I'll say, but also I didn't think Justin Fields will be available at 11.
That's true.
So
Right.
you never know.
Say, man, that was the last
Right.
time we picked in the first round was Justin Fields, and I remember it distinctly. Seeing it go Giants and go Bears, I was like, we're doing it.
Yeah, that was crazy. I just remember saying, "Please not Mac Jones."
Not
please
Mac
Mac
Jones.
I remember seeing
Same thing. Same
he
thing.
wasn't on the phone, and then you saw Justin Fields on the phone. I was like, thank God. Like,
Yeah.
And the dude who announced the pick was taking forever.
yeah.
Right? Remember that?
Bears.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're about an hour right now, so I think that we covered a lot today. So this was a lot of fun. Thanks guys for coming
boys,
on.
it's great.
You're welcome
Thanks for having
anytime. Make sure everyone follows Bears Blog Boys and Tom and Snyder on Twitter. Also subscribe to the Bears Blog Boys podcast. They do great stuff too. So make sure to do that. Like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff, and we'll talk to everyone next week. I think Luke and I next week are doing our big board release. So we'll be going over all of our big boards. So that's going to definitely be a must watch in my opinion. So make sure to tune in for that, and we'll talk to everyone next week.
We've given away a couple of positions tonight, but
it is what it is. All right. Bear down, everyone.
cheers, boys.
All right, you're down.